Coming into number 9, we have the Queen's murdered uncle. A firm question mark here, but was the Queen's uncle murdered? His death was certainly suspicious. It seems that the younger brother to the abdicated King Edward VIII and then the subsequent King George V, he was the Duke of Kent, he was bisexual and flamboyant, which was an issue for both of his brothers, especially the Crown in the 1940s. Also, an issue was that he was accused of also being an sympathizer. The rumour was that in order to save the throne the embarrassment of having him around, Prince George the Duke of Kent was sent on a special mission. It seems that the plane carrying the Duke and 14 other passengers went down. All but one survived, and there were many whisperings of the accident being all too convenient. It seems that the Duke was also a Freemason, so if it wasn't an accident, was it the Crown or was it the Freemasons? The sole survivor was forced to sign the official Secret Act. However, it is claimed that he told his family there was someone on board the aircraft that simply wasn't supposed to be there. Coming into number 8, we have the Queen is above the law. Luckily, our Queen is a sweet 93-year-old lady who seems to be pretty concerned with upholding the law rather than breaking it. But she could. Like most countries, the United Kingdom has a freedom of information system that basically allows the press and public to reasonably ask questions about various situations. Many say that this is vital in a democratic society, but the royal family have used their powers to block the Freedom of Information Act from applying to them. To put it simply, the Queen's private affairs can stay very, very private. She honestly really doesn't have to answer to anyone. Coming into number 7, we have Meghan's secret Instagram. I get it, if I suddenly married into royalty, I may also struggle to give up social media. I love Instagram, I love taking pictures and sharing them with the world, but when you're a member of the royal family, you're expected to be prim and proper, you're expected to be an ideal public figure. It seems that the former actress Meghan wanted to hold on to her more informal life and had a secret Instagram account for sharing snaps with family and friends. The Duchess of Sussex was forced to shut down her public profile when she married Harry, but she had a secret Instagram to follow her family and friends. However, the account led her to discover unwanted information about the way the public perceived her. Reading rumours that she'd been dubbed Duchess Difficult and had made sister-in-law Kate Middleton cry was hard for her to read, and especially hard on her mental health, so she gave up Instagram. Honestly, I get it, Instagram can be a bit of a mind melt, but I still love it. Does that make me wrong? Maybe. Coming into number 6, we have Diana's ghost. Honestly, I really don't know about this one. Of course, claiming that Princess Diana's ghost is out and about will garner headlines. I will say take this one with a pinch of salt though, like a very big pinch of salt. In August 2018, a man claiming to be a psychic contacted the so-called lonely ghost of Princess Diana and published a book of their alleged interview. There's that salt, I am pinching it. Ruho Akawa is a self-confessed religious leader from Japan. In the book, titled Spiritual Interview with the Princess, he claimed that Diana called Prince Charles, first in line to the throne, the devil. She also is said to have called the Queen the last light of England and said that the country will undergo a revolution. Get this, she also allegedly proclaimed a love of Islam. Sure, honestly, I think that we all know what to do with that salt we're pinching, just take it elsewhere, because there is legitimately no truth to this. Although I will say that this isn't the first time that Diana's ghost has been discussed. Weirdly, pop artist and X Factor finalist Chico claims that she visited and gave him lip implants one day, which, I'm sorry, what is everyone smoking? And like, can I maybe have some? Okay, so speaking of ghosts, let's go with some more credible sources for this one. Coming into number 5, we have King Henry VIII. Windsor Castle is one of the oldest of the Queen's homes and has been in the British royal family for generations. It was built by William the Conqueror in 1070 AD, and it's reported to be haunted by the spirits of former monarchies of England. Mad King George III, for example, is said to peer forlornly through a window. Charles I is said to haunt the grounds, and Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen as she was known, is thought to haunt the royal library. The most famous ghost of the 25 is thought to be none other than King Henry VIII. Mr. Chode himself. He's said to drag his gouty leg and groan as he moves around the cloisters. I know that he's dead, but his reputation for taking ladies' heads precedes him, and I will say on top of that, he's not the only scary ghost, there are loads of them. Once again, loads. It's not just kings and queens either, it seems that former prisoners and members of royal staff stalk the hallowed halls of Windsor Castle. Another castle coming in at number 4, we have The Queen Hates Buckingham Palace. So speaking of ghosts, did you know that Buckingham Palace, the official residence of the crown, is said to be haunted? It seems that an angry monk has made his presence known, although that isn't the reason that the Queen dislikes Buckingham Palace. It seems that nobody in the royal family is a fan of the palace, which has been in the monarchy's official residence since 1837. It seems that the building is drafty, frequented by mice, the roof leaks, and a lot of asbestos had to be removed in recent years. It's rumoured that Prince Charles is not a fan and doesn't want to live there when he's king. Is the royal family cursed? Find out at number 3, we have the royal curse. So this actually comes from the Queen Mother rather than the throne line of the Windsors. The Queen Mother was a descendant of the Bowes-Lyon family. Her pre-marriage name was Elizabeth Angela Marguerite Bowes-Lyon. What a mouthful. While she lived to the ripe old age of 101, her family are said to suffer a lifelong curse. The curse is said to stem back 600 years to the 15th century, where Alexander Lyon, the second Lord of Glamis, was said to have sold his soul to the devil. Rookie mistake. The home he owned at the time, Glamis Castle, is still in the Bowes-Lyons family. The Queen's grandfather once said if the secrets of the castle were known to the public, people would get down on their hands and knees and thank God it didn't belong to them. Perhaps the curse has carried. The Queen Mother lost her husband, King George, who died at the age of 51. Now the current Queen is the only monarch to have seen all of her children divorce. Then Windsor Castle burned in 1992, Princess Diana famously died in 1997, and the Queen lost her sister in 2002. Is this as a result of the curse?
Number 10. Secret Memorial. The sudden and tragic passing of Princess Diana shook much of the world, but it hit no one harder than Prince William. He loved his mother and has spoken openly about how much she meant to him and the pain her death has caused him. Perhaps that's why he likes to keep her around in small, secret ways. In everyday life and on special occasions, such as his wedding or most recently his grandmother the Queen's funeral, the prince can be seen wearing a silver-banded watch, and Omega Seamaster 300M to be exact. This same type of watch is worn by none other than James Bond in many of his films, usually including a neat gadget like a laser or a grappling hook. But the prince's doesn't have any spy features that we know of, and he doesn't wear it as part of a low-effort cosplay. No, this watch was actually given to him by his mother Diana, and he treasures it so much that he wears it as often as he can, even while conducting military operations as an Air Force helicopter pilot, showing just how much the gift and his mother meant to him. Number 9. Codenames. Before I get into this next one, guys, be sure to like and subscribe so that I can keep bringing you the most amazing videos. Now, it's no secret how much the royals require security, and being some of the most well-known, and some may say most controversial, figures in the world, I can see why. For example, Prince Harry's wedding to Meghan Markle cost a whopping £33.5 million, and $30 million of that was spent on security alone. But security isn't all black suits and earpieces. One of the most simple and effective ways the royals keep their privacy is by using code names for traveling, booking events, or making purchases. One of the secret names meant to denote the prince is Danny Collins, while Kate's was Daphne Clark, the first letters of both names being DC, the initials of their royal titles, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. But the secret names don't stop there. While attending University of St. Andrews, William decided to go by the name Steve in order to keep a lower profile and focus on his studies. Although now all I can think of is one of his uni friends watching the coronation on TV and saying, "Oi, isn't that bloke Steve from chemistry class on the telly?" Number 8. Speaking of codenames, Prince William actually had another nickname when he was younger, Billy the Basher. Reportedly, in preschool, the young prince had a sort of rough and tumble attitude. He pushed his way to the front of lines, teased students by pushing them around, and had a bit of a temper when it came to following the rules. The name was given to him not only by students but by his teacher, and some of the other parents adopted it as well. Allegedly, he also used to flex on the other kids with his royal stature, even going so far as to say things like, "My daddy can beat up your daddy, my daddy's the Prince of Wales." And apparently, this cheeky attitude and rude behavior followed him home from school, and Queen Elizabeth II had to have a chat with him and say that his behavior was not acceptable. Imagine getting put into timeout by the Queen. Number 7. Childhood crush. Although they seem otherworldly at times, at the end of the day, the royals are all people just like us, and even being in line for the throne doesn't save you from teenage embarrassment. Like many people his age, 13-year-old William had posters on his walls of singers, movies, and supermodels. And one day, his mother hatched a beautiful scheme. While the future king was at school, Diana was on the phone preparing for the prank of a lifetime. Friends and family often talked about how much she enjoyed pranking and goofing around with those that she cared about. When William and Harry came home from class and walked up the stairs at Kensington Palace, they saw not just their mother, but also Cindy Crawford, Christy Turlington, and Naomi Campbell, 3 of the models the boys had on their walls, standing there as though they had stepped right out of their posters. William, quote, "went bright red, didn't know what to say, and pretty much fell down the stairs." As a teenager, he tried to keep this embarrassing happening a secret, but now it's a fond memory of his mother, who he says was quite a joker. Number 6. While the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have been together for many years and got together while he was still just Steve, that doesn't mean that they haven't had their problems. In 2020, a new book revealed that the two had actually had a brief separation period in 2006, 3 years before their engagement. But this wasn't a mutual decision, apparently. Will actually dumped Kate over the phone, while she was at work, no less. I've had the misfortune of being broken up with on a phone call, but I can't imagine how it would have felt to have a future king dump you while you're prepping for the 11 o'clock meeting. That's cold, Bill. Kate was not one to mope around though, as she was seen not too long after out on the town with her friends, and eventually William came to his senses and reconciled with his now wife. Number 5. Yer A Wizard William. Harry Potter and the future king have more in common than just an accent and a castle, but they also share some key facial features, namely the scar. While Harry Potter got his scar as the result of magic gone wrong, or right, depending on how you slice it, William got his in a much less mystical way. When he was 13, the prince was playing golf with some of his classmates and, well, in his own words, "We were on a putting green and the next thing you know there was a 7-iron and it came out of nowhere and it hit me in the head." This accident left him with a lightning bolt-esque scar on his forehead, much like Harry's in the books and movies. Now hopefully, the prince's scar isn't a warning sign that part of a dark wizard's soul exists inside of him, but I don't think that he was hit by Voldemort's golf club, so we should be good. Number 4. Helicopter hell. Now, it's no secret that many of the royals also hold military titles and duties. Even the late Queen Elizabeth II served in the armed forces, and Prince William is no exception. He completed 7.5 years of full-time military service, including as a pilot for the Royal Air Force. He has used his helicopter pilot's license and skills outside of the military, however, as he was also a pilot for an air ambulance service. William has stated in multiple interviews that while the work was extremely fulfilling, it was also incredibly mentally taxing. He's thankful that he was able to use his skills to save many lives from many dangerous situations, but some of the scenes he was called to were too much for him, and he sometimes needed to step away for a moment. In the few instances where this happened, the prince explains that children were involved, and it made him think too much of his own children. Surely a job like that will leave you with some mental scars, so thank you to those of you out there who are first responders and help people in terrible situations. Number 3. Saucy ski trip. In 2017, on a boys' trip to Switzerland, William had many embarrassing videos surface involving him dancing. The first of which was relatively harmless, and it shows the Duke of Cambridge dad dancing in a club. Kinda like this. Now, those moves, while embarrassing, did not get him in any hot water, but the next moves sure did. Another video surfaced later of the prince dancing with 2 women, a blonde and a brunette, not at the same time, mind you, and quote, gyrating and grabbing hips with them. It is thought that one of the women is Australian supermodel Sophie Taylor, who was seen with William on the slopes earlier that weekend. Obviously, he would have liked this to stay buried, especially since his wife was at home with the children at the time. Number 2. An early coronation. Since we now know how much Prince William likes to tear up the dance floor, we need to talk about how he won a crown while dancing. No, not that kind. At his friend Tom's wedding, the usually reserved William let loose, and being one of the few members of his family in attendance, many eyes were on him. But this didn't stop him from giving it his all. While messing around and trying some, let's say, experimental dance moves out, the prince fell and broke a tooth. Now, I've broken a tooth before, and it's not a fun thing to deal with, not to mention how much it shocks you when you look in the mirror. But to make matters worse for Will, Kate was 9 months pregnant at the time and due any day, so the prince was worried that if Kate went into labor that night, he'd have to smile for the cameras with a missing tooth. Luckily, he was able to get some emergency dental work done to hide the embarrassing mistake. And number 1, a rose by any other name. In 2019, rumors arose of a rift in the friendship between the Duchess of Cambridge and her longtime friend Rose Hanbury when the British tabloid The Sun published an article stating that Prince William asked her to begin phasing Rose out of their lives. William made a statement against these claims, threatening legal action against any publications that continue to circulate the rumors, but now a UK journalist, Giles Corrin, made a claim in a now deleted tweet that Rose and William were having an affair, and that this is what caused the rift. With many public royal events still happening in the wake of the Queen's passing, and Rose attending many of these events along with the Duke and Duchess, it makes these claims all the more volatile. And since there is no real evidence to go along with it, and the story is still developing, we need to take all of this with a massive spoonful of salt, and wait to see what else happens. Either way, this would not be a secret the royals would want getting out.
Number 10. Secret wedding. Is this a fantasy? A secret wedding? Well, it ain't fiction, people. In their March 2021 tell-all interview with Oprah Winfrey, Meghan Markle and Harry revealed that they were actually married before the official ceremony at Windsor Castle. Apparently, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Wellesby, married the pair in an intimate backyard ceremony 3 days before their televised wedding. When talking about it, Meghan said, quote, "This thing, this spectacle," speaking about the televised wedding, "is for the world, but we want our union between us." That's actually kind of nice. I support it. Kind of proves that some of these royal affairs are just for show though. But a lot of us already knew that, didn't we? Number 9. Royal trap. Sticking with that Oprah Winfrey tell-all, Harry also revealed that he felt and/or feels trapped by the royal system, which is extremely understandable. Most royals have seemed slightly removed from real life. He revealed his compassion for his father and brother being trapped in the life of royals, especially now with Charles being king and William being first in line for the throne. They can't really leave their duties. Harry has made it clear that he really wouldn't want to be king anyways, and with Harry now being 5th in line, and especially after his marriage to Meghan and their split from the royals, he is a bit more free to live his life now how he chooses, which must be nice, especially because he isn't exactly poor. Number 8. Grief. I know I said let's have some fun, but for this point, I want to be a bit more serious. Losing a loved one is never a good time, and the grief one can go through, especially a child, makes an impact. When Harry lost his mother Diana, it affected him powerfully. He has said in the 2017 documentary, Diana, Our Mother, Her Life and Legacy, "The first time I cried was at the funeral at the island, and since then, maybe once." So there's a lot of grief that still needs to be let out. It was a classic case of don't let yourself think about your mom and the grief and the hurt because it's never going to bring her back, and it's only going to make you more sad. He also told The Telegraph in a podcast, "Losing my mom at the age of 12 and therefore shutting down all of my emotions for the last 20 years has had a quite serious effect on not only my personal life but my work as well." He has since revealed that he has sought out professional help, and like his mother, he opened up the truth about his mental health to the public in order to ease the stigma surrounding mental health. So hats off to you, Prince Harry. And at number 7 is 9th of his name. Okay, this one both makes sense but also completely took me by surprise. When his engagement was first announced, fans who didn't know any better found out that Prince Harry isn't actually named Harry. Technically, and legally, Prince Harry is actually, get this, Prince Henry. Ooh, shocking. His actual full name is Prince Henry Charles Albert David. Harry is actually a British nickname for Henry, and that's how the public got to know him. So interestingly, that means if Harry ever did take the throne, which is highly unlikely, he would be King Henry IX. Yes, that's 9th, since the last king of that name would be the incredibly famous wife-beheading King Henry VIII. Number 6. Underwear? And now for something completely different. In August of 2012, Prince Harry apparently stripped down to his nothings playing billiards in a Las Vegas suite. What he may or may not have known is that a dancer who was present at the High Rollers room snatched up a probably not so fresh pair of the prince's black royal tighty-whities, and she held onto them until August of this year when she put them up on auction. The opening bid started right at $10,000, and it slowly rose until it hit $16,000, which is was when a club owner from San Diego, Dino, placed a crazy bid of $250,000 buckaroos, $250,000 for this old pair of monarchical boxer briefs. Now I haven't seen any updates on the auction, which ended in September, so I think it's safe to assume Dino has acquired the royal undies. Number 5. Strategy. Remember when I said to not take this all too seriously? Well, this is why. Shortly after Meghan and Harry announced their engagement, one man tweeted about how when the couple has kids, they'll be American citizens and therefore will be eligible to run for president as well as be in line for the British monarchy. He said, "Brits are playing the long ball here, but it's a smart move. They want America back and this is how they'll do it." This little tweet sparked all kinds of rumors that Meghan was just being used as a political pawn to help England regain control of America. Honestly, kind of hilarious. I hope it's true. Then we can just bring back the whole the British are coming thing. Number 4. Costume party. I don't get why famous people, particularly politically famous people, have this weird thing for dressing up in incredibly insensitive costumes for Halloween. I don't even know how to say this without getting the video flagged. Basically, in 2005, a 20-year-old Prince Harry thought it would be a good idea to wear a red armband with a certain symbol and a uniform resembling that of the German World War II Afrika Korps Army to a Halloween party, and surprise, the photos of him in costume leaked online. Once the images were published, it definitely blew up and the palace was forced to do some damage control. The prince issued an apology saying, "I am very sorry if I have caused any offense or embarrassment to anyone. It was a poor choice of costume and I apologize." Now look, 20 is young, but it's old enough to know that this was a bad idea. Number 3. Who's your daddy? In a 1995 BBC interview for the show Panorama, journalist Martin Bashir interviewed Princess Diana, and in one of the more titillating moments from the conversation, Diana admitted to a 5-year affair with one Major James Hewitt, a red-headed former cavalry officer in the British Army. But arguably the most head-turning part of this affair came about when the ever-vicious media speculated that Hewitt was actually Prince Harry's biological father. Many outlets noted the similar facial features and prominent red hair between the two, plus the fact that Harry looks less like Charles in comparison. But Hewitt has insisted that the dates don't match up since he and Diana did not begin their affair until after Harry was born. Personally, Hewitt looks more like Ed Sheeran to me, but I just work here. Number 2. Rehab. But no, not actually. Prince Charles reportedly made Harry visit Featherstone Lodge Rehabilitation Center in Peckham for just one day after it was discovered he had been partying a bit too hard. It was after a private party at Highgrove, when Harry had the place to himself, that a member of the royal staff smelled the devil's lettuce and alerted Prince Charles. Charles is reported to have asked Prince William to suggest to Harry that he should spend some time at the Featherstone Clinic, a rehabilitation center for much heavier substances, to familiarize himself with the dangers of such actions. It was reported that the prince visited the center for a day as a short, sharp shock and awe tactic and not for actual treatment, obviously because he really didn't do anything that bad. According to the report, Charles told aides, "There is no point in hiding the truth. These are the facts. Let people make their own judgment." But the palace was still not very forthcoming about the incident. And in at number 1, Harry, that is not a cup. This isn't really a secret, but in 2013 the prince completed a 200-mile trek to the South Pole, along with 12 wounded servicemen and women from the United Kingdom, the United States, and around the British Commonwealth. Originally a competition between the countries, the expedition's director decided to turn it into a team effort after rough conditions made racing too dangerous. The trek also included British actor Dominic West, who told of some of the antics at the end of the trip when the group reached their destination. Apparently, Prince Harry told some eye-wateringly rude jokes and drank champagne out of a prosthetic leg at the end of the Marathon Polar Challenge. He really had nothing but praise for the prince, but he said, "Two of the Aussie guys stripped naked and ran around the pole, but most of us, Harry included, just went on a 2-day bender with the Icelandic truck drivers who had brought some lethal homebrew with them. We all drank champagne out of Duncan, who's a double amputee's favorite prosthetic leg."
Starting us off at number 10 is Rightful Heritage. Richard III was a big player in the game. He was a protagonist during the War of Roses and was a King of England and Lord of Ireland from 1483 till his death. Back in 2012, over 500 years after his death, his remains were found in a Leicester parking lot. His original tomb was removed during the English Reformation and people just assumed they had been thrown in the River Soar, but they were wrong. Through radiocarbon dating, the University of less to confirm the corpse was Richard III, but his mitochondrial DNA didn't link him to any maternal relatives, meaning any descendants of his sister Anne of York, and there was no match whatsoever, meaning at some point in the royal bloodline someone had a secret affair with somebody, which means that there were so many kings and queens that came after them that probably did not have the right to rule, including Queen Elizabeth II. And even looks-wise, all his portraits depicted him as brunette with dark eyes, but DNA revealed he was actually blonde with blue eyes. So, I mean, major T there. Which one of y'all is treated? Coming in at number 9 is The Secret Son. King George V was the king of the UK and British Dominions, as well as the Emperor of India from 1910 till his death 25 years later. He married Mary of Teck back in 1893, and their youngest son Prince John developed epilepsy at the age of 3. Now the couple thought this diagnosis brought great embarrassment to the royal family, so they hid John at Sandringham House in Norfolk. Anytime he came into town to visit the doctor, the blinds would be fully down so no one knew who he was or where he was. The family excluded him from most of their biographies and photos, so he lived a quite lonely, secluded life. His seizures ended up getting worse as he got older, and he died at the age of 13 to the devastation of his parents. His brother, on the other hand, said he was relieved the animal was dead. His illness was only made public after his death. And I feel like this whole thing was so sad. First of all, your brother's a prick. Secondly, were your parents that devastated since they just left you hidden? This is so sad. Prince John. Prince John. At number 8, we have Princess Diana's depression. Now, it's not new information that Prince Charles and Diana had a tumultuous marriage. In audio tapes aired originally on US television back in 2004, Diana talked about how unhappy she was within the marriage, her struggle with depression, and her multiple attempts. She explained how she threw herself down the stairs when she was 3 months pregnant with Prince William, landing at the feet of the Queen. In regards to her depression and suicide, Princess Diana explained, "I was trying to cut my wrists with razor blades. We were trying to hide that from everybody. I was just so desperate." She also talked about having bulimia and that the eating disorder started after Prince Charles put his hand on her waist and said, "A bit chubby here, aren't we?" How rude! Whose husband says that to them? If that was my husband, I would have pushed him down the stairs. And producer Chris was like, "That's just frightfully rude." It is indeed. And of course, after her death, we knew she was unhappy in the marriage and had finally found happiness with Dodi Fayed, but I don't think people knew the extent of how bad things actually were behind closed doors. Like, I felt like I knew a lot about Princess Diana because I feel like my parents were just obsessed with her when I was growing up, but I didn't know she had multiple suicide attempts. I didn't know any of that. And it kind of saddens me. It definitely saddens me. Now at number 6 is the staff member. Princess Anne, Queen Elizabeth II's only daughter, got married to Mark Phillips, an Olympic equestrian. The marriage was complete shit. And despite being married for 20 years, it was dubbed a joyless sham. When they finally got divorced in 1992, British tabloid The Sun claimed they had secret love letters that Anne herself had written, and they were apparently for a royal staff member. Oh ho ho ho, hee hee hee. That same year, she announced she was marrying Timothy Lawrence, a retired British naval officer and also one of her equerries. Oh, how the tables have turned. I love it when the tables turn. I love it when it's like an affair with a royal and one of their servants. It's like hoo hoo hoo. You know what I mean? I know you guys are all doing that inside, I just did it outwardly for you. Coming in at number 5 is The Club. I don't even know how to talk about this one without being offensive, so just know I don't mean anything maliciously. So Princess Anne is the only daughter of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, and her daughter is Zara Phillips. In 2011, Zara married rugby player and England captain Michael Tyndall. That year, after winning against Argentina, the team was in New Zealand when he decided to go to a dwarf throwing club. According to Michael, no one on the team threw a dwarf, but just the fact they were there was just messed up. I didn't even know establishments like that existed, and it caused so much outrage that stars like Peter Dinklage, who was born with a dwarfism himself, called them out on it. Can you imagine that kind of secret? What? How? What? What is that? What is that? What is a dwarf throwing club? And number 4 is Beatrice and the Killer. Princess Beatrice of York is the daughter of Prince Andrew and Sarah, making her Queen Elizabeth's granddaughter and 9th in line for the throne. So she's more of a sideman royal, to be honest. We don't really have to pay too much attention to her, but just a little bit. Back in 2006, at the tender age of 17, Beatrice started dating American playboy Paolo Liuzzo, and honestly, honey, the playboy should have been all the red flags you needed to get out of that one. Before they started dating though, Paolo savagely and killed 17-year-old Jonathan Dutatellier at a party. Apparently, Jonathan had confronted Paolo about how he was disrespecting girls at the party, and that didn't sit well with Mr. Playboy over there. His manslaughter charge was somehow dropped and reduced to just battery and assault, and to top it all off, he even violated the terms of his probation while trying to impress Beatrice. Thankfully, they didn't date long, and good thing too, because 3 years later he was charged with possessing after crashing a £40,000 Audi after he didn't pay his casino bill. Filling our number 3 slot is the one that got away. Princess Margaret is Queen Elizabeth II's little sister, and when she was 14 years old, sometime after World War II, she met Captain Peter Townsend. In 1953, her dad, King George VI, died and her sister became queen. At 22 years old, Margaret was in love with Peter, who is married now with 2 kids. He had divorced his wife as she was having an affair, and so Peter and Margaret desperately wanted to get married. Royalty can't marry divorcees if their spouses are still alive, and the Queen had to consent to their marriage. Queen Elizabeth II fought for them hard, but Winston Churchill was like, nah, my cabinet is not gonna accept that marriage. When news finally broke out about the 2 of them, the government posted Peter at the embassy in Brussels. Margaret then eventually had to abandon her tragic love story and ended up marrying photographer Anthony Armstrong Jones in 1960, the one that truly got away. Comment below if you've had one that got away. Now at number 2 is the real parentage. The British royal family is probably the most famous one in our day and age. We know Prince William and Kate and co, we know Harry and Meghan Markle and little old Archie. We're invested, let's be real. I remember the day William and Kate got married, I took so many videos of the live wedding on TV, I was like, this is history is being made, it has to be on my phone. But either way, as I mentioned at the start of the video, Princess Diana was not happy. In a tell-all interview she did back in 1995, she came clean about the fact she had a 5-year-long affair with military man James Hewitt. And then as Harry grew older, the resemblance between James and himself became more and more evident. Harry was born in 1984, which made the timing make sense, but Hewitt and Diana herself emphasized that he was born 2 years before the affair even started. But was he though? I mean, of course they'd never admit if Harry was a or not, because it would rock the world. So I mean, I guess we'll really never know, but they do look quite similar, I'm not gonna lie. And finally, at number 1 is the black sheep. I love a black sheep in the family. I think I'm my own family's black sheep, not gonna lie. Now you'd think I was about to go off about Prince Harry, but actually I'm gonna be talking about Prince George, the Duke of Kent, and perhaps the most controversial member of the royal family. He was the 4th son of King George V and Queen Mary, and he was the target of never-ending salacious rumors. Even after marrying Princess Marina of Greece and Denmark, he had a string of affairs with celebs, socialites, you name it. And he was supposedly bisexual too, having a string of male and female lovers, which obviously did not sit well with the time or his title. He partied a lot and was regularly accused of like he was the proper party boy. Step aside, Paolo, whatever your last name was. Those originated from him knowing Kiki Preston, who he then went on to share many menage-a-trois with. In August of 1942, he and 14 others took off in an RAF flying boat, which later crashed near Scotland, killing everyone but one. All his personal life issues were kept under wraps, but many believe his lifestyle got way too much for the royal family to control, so they commissioned someone to take down the aircraft. There also was an additional person on board the flight that no one could identify. Starting us off with number 10 is the other woman. Now I actually knew this one beforehand because I used to be obsessed with the CW show Reign, which is primarily about Mary, Queen of Scots, and Elizabeth I. Either way, the show took the juiciest facets of the royals' real lives and incorporated it into the show, and this one was a major plot line. It was believed that Queen Elizabeth was having an affair with one of her most trusted friends, Robert Dudley. He was a suitor for her hand for years before marrying Amy Robsart, which made their secret relationship that much more juicy. We love a juicy under-the-table relationship, don't we? No, we don't. It's cheating, ruins lives, don't do it. Elizabeth would even turn down every suitor that came her way for Robert, but the 2 lovebirds couldn't get married while Amy was still in the picture. Amy, you're looking like a problem, my friend. Conveniently, she died a very mysterious death, and it was rumored that Elizabeth and Robert orchestrated the whole thing. Amy's body was found with a broken neck at the bottom of the stairs, so most believe she had either fallen or committed. But the coroner's report concluded she had deep puncture wounds on her head, meaning someone had hit her either before she fell down the stairs or purposely threw herself down the stairs or was pushed down the stairs by whoever hit her in the head. Maybe it was Robert Dudley. Coming in at number 9 are the secret cousins. Now, we already saw in part 1 that the royal family does not handle mental disabilities well, regardless if the afflicted were their children or not. Queen Elizabeth II actually had 2 first cousins whose existence was covered up to the best of the family's abilities. Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon were the children of John Bowes-Lyon, who was Queen Elizabeth's uncle. The girls were incarcerated in Earlswood Hospital, a mental institution, back in 1941. The girls were mute but otherwise had mischievous fun personalities, yet staff at the hospital claimed the royal family never came to visit them even once. Nerissa passed away in 1986 and Catherine as recently as 2014, yet they had both been listed as dead since 1963. The family didn't even attend Nerissa's funeral, for God's sake. Like, come on, put some respect on her name. How dare you list them as dead when they're clearly alive? Filling at number 7 slot is the price. So this one made me laugh a lot. I don't know if it should have, but I found it bloody hilarious. So we just got into Prince Andrew's dirty laundry, so it is only fair we expose his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, lovingly referred to as Fergie in the UK, also not to be mistaken for Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas. She's Fergalicious. This is just plain Fergie. Now, back in 2010, a recording was made and released by an undercover reporter who had captured Fergie selling access to Prince Andrew in exchange for money. The reporter offered her a whopping $700,000 for the information, and she can be heard saying, "Do you understand that I absolutely have not a pot to piss in? I left the royal family with friendship, no money. Diana left with £20 million, and that's why the Queen is my friend, because I never took a bean from them. I have the biggest heart and the biggest of everything, but I have zero money, I have nothing." I mean, I don't think the Queen's gonna be your friend after that, Fergie babes. I think you kind of nipped that in the bud, didn't you? Now, number 6 is the criminal offense. Now, as a normal person in society, you really don't want to have any criminal offenses on your record, and for a royal, the pressure is 100-fold to make sure you don't. But thanks to me, your host for Keeping Up with the Royals, we found a pair of royals that have been charged with a criminal offense, exposing you left, right, and center. Ha ha ha. Coming to you straight from quarantine. The Princess Anne, the only daughter of the Queen, was known for her charity work more than anything else. However, in 2002, she and her husband went to Windsor Great Park to walk their dogs. All of a sudden, one of their dogs got free and aggressively attacked 2 kids riding their bikes. The couple were then obviously taken to court, they had to pay a fine, and they were charged with the offense. The dog wasn't put down, to the dismay of the kids' families, but then a year later, that same dog killed one of the Queen's corgis. So I mean, this really boils down to the age-old question of who did let the dogs out. Coming in at number 5 is the love child. While we're on the topic of Princess Anne, the secret involves her too, so I guess she's no stranger to controversy either. In 1973, Anne married Lieutenant Mark Phillips at Westminster Abbey, and it was a huge deal. The whole thing was televised. You know how royal ceremonies are. They're big. Now, while the couple had a rocky marriage from beginning till the end, it was complete and despite being married for 20 years, it was dubbed a joyless sham. 12 years into their marriage, Mark ended up having an affair with an art teacher from New Zealand called Heather Tonkin, and from that affair came a baby girl. And even with a child from another woman, the marriage continued for another few years before finally coming to an end. That same year, Anne then married one of the royal staff members, so I mean, there's that. There's a lot of just tea going around, isn't there? At number 4 is Lady Sarah. Princess Diana has been a household name ever since I can remember, but this one's actually about her older sister, Lady Sarah McCorquodale, who I had no idea even existed. McCorquodale, where have you been? Well, apparently Sarah was the one that introduced Prince Charles to Diana, starting the strained love affair. However, Sarah actually dated Charles herself before Diana did. The two dated in the 70s, but then broke up, and clearly whatever happened left a bad taste in her mouth, because she went on to say she would never marry Charles, whether he were the Dustman or the King of England. I don't think I could ever date one of my sister's exes. I feel like that's just so bloody weird. That's just too weird for me. I couldn't do it. Filling in the 3 slot is Camilla Gate Part 1. Watergate was bad for the world, but mostly for America, and Camilla Gate was the same for the British, albeit it was a lot funnier. Now, a month after Prince Charles and Princess Diana announced that they were going to split up in 1989, a phone conversation was recorded between Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles, and let's just say the content was R-rated. The couple was still married at the time when Charles and Camilla were talking about the dirty on the phone, which made Diana quote-unquote sick. Charles at one point even said he wished he lived inside Camilla's trousers like a Tampax, just his luck. I'm not gonna say anything on this. I'm not gonna comment. Now, at number 2 is Camilla Gate Part 2. Now, if a leaked bedtime conversation of the two wasn't bad enough, I think this is the biggest plot twist of all. In a 1995 interview with Martin Bashir, Princess Diana admitted she had known about Charles and Camilla's affair all along and had actually spoken to Charles about her own love affair with James Hewitt, her riding instructor. I feel like Diana was so past the point of even giving a single shit. She was like, oh, you're cheating? That's cool, dude, so am I. How's she doing? This is how James is doing. And finally, at number 1 is Coup. I feel like for the most part, Prince Andrew has been on this list far more times than I'd like. Like, poor Prince Harry got a bad name as the black sheep of the family. Was not a single person paying attention to Prince Andrew and the show that he was creating. Like, what happened to that? Back in 1982, Andrew started dating an American girl called Kathleen Stark, also referred to as Coup. Now, things were going pretty well with her, and so he introduced her to his mum, Queen Elizabeth II, and she quite liked her. What the Queen didn't know, however, was the fact that Coup was a softcore adult actress, and a lot of naked pictures of her had appeared in British tabloids and newspapers. So when she found that out, you can imagine what kind of conversation ensued thereafter. Andrew. Personally, I don't care what somebody does. I feel like adult actors and actresses get a very bad rep, but I mean, it's a job at the end of the day. Either way, that is it for today's video, guys. I love it. It just gets juicier and juicier with the royal family, doesn't it? They're honestly probably more juicier than the Kardashians, and that is saying something.
Starting off this countdown, we have the criminal. In 2006, eldest daughter of Prince Andrew dated a criminal. Yeah, she dated a man that was arrested for manslaughter after killing a man named Jonathan Duchateler. He literally beat him to death. Of course, they tried to hide this because it looks so bad on them if a princess had a relationship with a literal killer. But what's crazy is how when news got out, they released a statement saying they must trust her and trust her judgment. Dude, where's the respect and trust for Meghan and Harry? Like, the injustice is so sickening. Moving on to number 8, we have the racism. In Meghan Markle's interview with Oprah, she revealed how racist the royal family is. She felt like she was never accepted because of her skin color since she is biracial. In fact, she said in an interview that there were concerns and conversations about how dark her son's skin might be when he was born. Yeah, they were actually concerned that her son wouldn't look light enough. That is absolutely repulsive. They literally shunned Meghan and her son because of their skin color. Not only that, but there were discussions if her son would even have enough protection. Again, probably having to do with his race. And at number 7, we have the death of Princess Diana. This has to be one of the most controversial deaths of all time. I mean, there are a number of conspiracy theories surrounding her death, but honestly, it seems like the British royal family might be behind her death. In fact, Princess Diana herself feared for her safety. She thought she was going to be killed. This was revealed in a letter that she wrote to her butler. In the letter she said, and I quote, "I am sitting here at my desk today in October, longing for someone to hug me and encourage me to keep strong and hold my head high. This particular phase in my life is the most dangerous, ... is planning an accident in my car. Brake failure and serious head injury in order to make the path clear for Charles to marry." Yeah, Diana literally thought she was going to die in a car accident, and would you look at that. In fact, she expressed concerns to her bodyguards about troubles that she was having with her car. Her bodyguard later died in an accident, which the royals might be behind too. Basically, a conspiracy theory goes that the royals didn't approve of her new lover. In fact, she might have been pregnant with his child. And that's another reason why the royals wanted her dead. So theory goes that the royals either sabotaged the seatbelts in her car, or orchestrated the car crash, or both. In our 6th spot, we have the relation to the German soldiers. You know, that particular group of really bad soldiers in around 1933, run by a certain dictator. I gotta tiptoe around this because of YouTube. But turns out that a British royal family member had a close friendship with... Yeah, that's right. So Queen Elizabeth II's uncle and his wife were sympathizers for these soldiers. They had close ties to the man behind the horror himself. In fact, rumor has it that his wife was giving over information to the Germans. The British government did everything they could to keep this connection and friendship hidden, but in 1957, it all came to light. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the sham. So it turns out that the royal family may not be royal at all. That's right. Let me explain. So King Richard III was King of England until 1485. He died during battle. Well, anyways, for the longest time, Richard III's remains were thought to be lost. That was until 2012 when his remains were discovered. Scientists tested the DNA and concluded that it did belong to him, but the tests didn't link him to any paternal relatives, meaning he didn't really come from a chain of royals. So somewhere along the line, infidelity occurred. Now people are rethinking and reanalyzing the royal family tree, and in the end, they may not actually be royal. Somebody come after Queen Elizabeth. Someone do it. Or whatever, Queen Elizabeth II. Come after her. Oh lady. Coming in at number 4, we have the incest. This is actually quite common in royal families, as they want to keep the royalness within the family. But turns out that Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip are distant cousins. Yeah, they share the same bloodline and are both directly related to Queen Victoria. But it doesn't stop there. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were actually first cousins. They ended up having 9 children together. Yikes. There's even some people that believe that Queen Elizabeth's parents were brother and sister. Yet that hasn't been proven. But there's just too much inbreeding going on. In our 3rd spot, we have the hidden son. Guess what? George V and Queen Mary had a 6th son, Prince John. Prince John would have been Queen Elizabeth's second uncle, but John suffered from epileptic seizures. Because of this, they thought it showed signs of weakness, so they hid him from the public. Imagine that, being shunned by your family just because you had something you couldn't control. He then was forced to live the last 4 years of his life away in hiding. Like, that's no way to live a life at all. Later, he passed away at his secret cottage after a tragic seizure. In our 2nd spot, we have sexuality and drug use. Prince George, the Duke of Kent, had a lot of things going on, and the royal family was ashamed of him. Apparently, he had a long list of lovers, both men and women. And you can only imagine what his family thought about that. Not only that, but he also would abuse a number of substances. There was a lot of gossip going on about him. But in 1942, George tragically passed in a plane crash. Theory goes that the royals were behind this. They planned his death because of his bisexuality and drug use. Crazy. And in our number 1 spot, we have the hidden cousins. If you have watched The Crown, then you probably have already heard this shocker of a story. But 2 of the Queen's first cousins were actually abandoned because they both had disabilities. The cousins' names were Catherine and Nerissa Bowes-Lyon. They both were born with severe learning disabilities. As a result, the royals were ashamed of them. They thought that this would taint the family or degrade their royal status. So they sent them to a mental health institution, which wasn't even the best. They were very mistreated there. They then went on to declare them legally dead, even though they were still alive. They kept them a huge secret. Now, when Nerissa passed away, she was buried in a grave marked only with a name tag and a serial number. That is extremely sad. They didn't even give her a proper burial.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have King Charles I. Okay, so this is one that goes way back, and it really creeps me out. So King Charles I was tried for treason after the Civil War, and he ended up being beheaded in 1649. I guess in the 1600s, everyone was beheaded, so this wasn't necessarily abnormal, which certainly is weird, but that's a history lesson for another day. The weird part, however, is that apparently his head was sewn back on his body so that he could sit for a portrait, or it was perhaps supposed to be a sign of respect. Either way, it's weird and very gross. I feel terrible for whoever's job it was to do that, and I also feel bad for the artist who was forced to paint that. Talk about a little traumatic. It does certainly make sense though that people say that Charles' ghost still haunts a building, because there's no amount of haunting that could make up for being beheaded and then having your head sewn back onto your body. No thanks. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Kensington system. Queen Victoria's reign began in 1837 and it lasted up until her death in 1901. She was just 18 years old when she found herself on the throne, and it was all by chance, as she was actually 5th in line when she was born. This is all stressful enough, but certainly one of the worst parts of her upbringing was being brought up under the Kensington system. This means that her mother, Duchess Victoria of Kent, who created this system in order to control her daughter, literally just isolated her away from all of her friends and even from other family members, and apparently this was done to keep her quote-unquote pure. The Duchess would monitor her every move. She would decide who she could see and who she could speak to. Victoria only had 2 friends she could play with growing up, one being her half-sister and the other being her mother's attendant, Sir John Conroy. Victoria was even forced to share a room with her mother, and until she was the queen, she couldn't even walk down the hall by herself. In the end, Victoria placed a lot of blame on John Conroy for manipulating her mother. She even called him the demon incarnate. In our number 8 spot today, we have money making. We obviously know that the British royal family is rich. It certainly isn't a surprise to any of us to hear that. I mean, they made a tax-free $97 million in 2017, so it's not like they're struggling by any stretch of the imagination. And while there are claims that most of their income comes from their private estates and tourism, not everyone believes that this is the case. There are actually quite a few people who believe that the royal family costs British taxpayers a whopping $450 million a year. That's a ton of money. I truly do not know enough about anything to really choose a side, but it certainly is something to think about. I know with taxpayer money we pay a lot of salaries, and it's usually for a good reason, but $450 million is definitely next level. In our number 7 spot today, we have the change of name. So for us here in Canada, later in May, we have a day called Victoria Day. We set off fireworks, people have barbecues, it's like one of those types of holidays. Back in 1819, Queen Victoria, of course, before she was queen, was christened in a mostly private ceremony. It was quite small, her uncle only let a few people come, and at the time of this christening, her name was Alexandrina Victoria. Apparently during this time period, the name Victoria wasn't looked at as a regal name. It had French origin and was almost unique at the time. So flash forward to when Queen Victoria is first taking the throne, she begins getting advised to change her name. They thought that it would give her a better public image if she had a more traditional name. Clearly, as the history books and our Canadian calendars show us, Queen Victoria said, yeah, no thanks, I'm not gonna do that. In our number 6 spot today, we have the controversial history. The British royal family has quite a history of being perhaps less inclusive of others than would normally be accepted. There is actually quite an extensive history of racism in the royal family, and as we now know, especially after that Oprah interview last year, things haven't necessarily recently changed either. There have been certain gestures or small remarks made here and there that have definitely been a little out of touch, I'll call it. And unfortunately, Meghan Markle, being a biracial person, had to experience a lot of it firsthand. I mean, just to give a few examples, Prince Philip did ask Indigenous Australians if they still throw spears at each other, okay? And once, Princess Michael of Kent tried to apologize after being called out for saying something racist, and this is what she said, quote, "To call me racist, it's a knife through the heart because I really love these people. I even pretended years ago to be an African, a half-caste African, but because of my light eyes I did not get away with it, but I dyed my hair black." Okay, there is so much to unpack in that one sentence alone, but I have an extremely strong feeling that this apology probably wasn't well received, especially considering it lacked the whole apology part of an apology. In our number 5 spot today, we have Boy Jones. Okay, I've heard of people being called Boy Jones before, but little did I know Boy Jones was a very real and very creepy person. His full name was Edward Jones, and this little rascal basically stalked the Queen from 1838 to 1841. He managed to break into Buckingham Palace, and we aren't just talking about once. No, we're talking about many, many times. He knew exactly where to go and what to do, and once in the castle, he would hide under the Queen's sofa, he would sit on her throne, and worst of all, he would go through her clothing. Like, what a little creep. He even went as far as to steal her clothes, which is just stupid. Of course, taking evidence of your crimes is just bad practice. Thankfully, he did finally get caught, but man, a few years of sneaking in and sitting on the throne, that's crazy. In our number 4 spot today, we have messy relationships. Joan of Kent lived during the 14th century in England, and she was known as being one of the most beautiful women in all of England. She was said to be quite loving, but it is also said that she had quite a whirlwind and controversial love life. So basically, Joan was only 12 when she had her first marriage. I know, horrifying now, but as was the practice at the time. She married a knight named Tom Holland, but when Tom went to war, Joan was approached by another man, the son of the Earl of Salisbury, Mary, who asked for her hand in marriage. Despite the whole Tom situation, she said yes, because at this time there was no way for anyone to know who would be coming back from battle, and she just assumed that Tom had died. It was of course quite the shock to everyone when Tom ended up returning, very much alive, to find out about all of this. A legal battle followed, which Tom ended up winning, and him and Joan went on to raise 4 children. After Tom's passing, however, Joan would go on to marry again, to the dismay of many people. This time she would marry the son of King Edward III, and she went on to become the first Princess of Wales. In our number 3 spot today, we have royal affairs. There have been many rumors over the years about the British royal family and their extramarital affairs, and I'm saying that this goes way back. So far back that one of the first accusations of this within the royal family dates all the way back to King Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. Since then, it has only continued with people such as Princess Margaret and Peter Townsend, Princess Anne and Commander Timothy Lawrence, and of course Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles, just to name a few. The latter of those definitely being the most famous, especially when Prince Charles was confronted about it by his wife at the time, the beloved Princess Diana. Apparently Charles responded to the confrontation by saying, quote, "Well, I refuse to be the only Prince of Wales who never had a mistress." Maybe not the attitude to keep when speaking to your wife who you're cheating on. I don't know, just a thought. In our number 2 spot today, we have Prince John. This one is said to possibly be one of the darkest secrets of the British royal family. Prince John would have been the uncle of Queen Elizabeth II, but he passed before she was born. Prince John was the 6th child of King George V and Queen Mary, and it is said that he suffered from seizures, likely as a result of epilepsy, although it's hard to diagnose for certain because of all of the secrecy surrounding him and his illness. From the age of 4, when he had his first seizure, until his untimely and early death, Prince John lived in a separate estate where he was cared for by a governess. Many people have since criticized the royal family, calling their treatment of Prince John as callous or inhumane, like they were hiding him away for being ill. Of course, the palace was concerned with the monarchy's public image, and there was a belief at the time that royals shouldn't have any physical or mental ailments, although that of course is impossible. They also didn't include him in public events, which could have been another image thing, and also perhaps because of a worry that he might have a seizure at one of these events. At the end of the day, it was definitely a different time, but the idea of excluding him because he was ill truly is a very sad thought. In our number 1 spot today, we have the flag at half-mast. It is normal for a flag to be flown at half-mast following a great tragedy, so this certainly is not a dark tradition that the royal family has, but it's the time that they did not do this that is dark that I want to talk about today. After Princess Diana's death, people everywhere began mourning the loss, especially considering how young she was and how it all happened so quickly and unexpectedly. But the crazy thing, or I guess when you really think about it, the potentially sinister thing about it, is that the royal family just continued on as if nothing happened. Of course, business still needs to be conducted at times despite grief, but for many of them, there simply was no grief. The flag at Kensington Palace wasn't lowered to half-mast until the people complained about it, because they obviously felt like it was a slight to the princess. There were no public statements made until a day before her funeral, and there were many people who believed that if no one spoke up about this.
In our number 10 spot, we have the Queen's last photos. Look, these last photos of the Queen are not dark at all. Yes, I know the title of this video says dark, but I can't do it. I can't say that it is. The Queen literally looks so sweet in this photo, and there's nothing but light surrounding her. She reminds me so much of my granny. I hope they're having tea together in heaven. The Queen almost looks like an angel already here in these photos. In almost every one of these last shots shared, the Queen is smiling so big, as if she's just happy and not suffering or anything. Of course, the public doesn't know the details of her final days and what she might have gone through, but these photos would suggest that she was content in her favorite place, Balmoral, and just living up her final days on the planet. You could spin it and say that anyone's final days are dark, but nah, these are just bright and beautiful, and I refuse to associate them with the characterization of dark. In our number 9 spot, we have Princess Diana's last shots. Here we have a bunch of shots of Princess Diana in her final hours, getting into her car with her bodyguard and the man that she was seeing, Dodi Fayed. She was in Paris at the time when her car crashed, killing all of the passengers in the car. There is one final shot of Princess Diana with Dodi in an elevator, and Diana is looking directly at the elevator camera and smiling. The shot is quite eerie as you look at her beautiful smile and spirit having fun until the end. What makes them even more eerie is if there's a slight part of you that buys into the theory that the crash was an insider job.
That always makes me so uncomfortable to think about, and it quite possibly makes looking at these images more chilling. In our number 8 spot, we have the Queen and Prince Philip. This is one of the last photos taken of Prince Philip at age 99 with Queen Elizabeth II. It's actually so sweet and sad at the same time as they look at a homemade wedding anniversary card from their grandchildren. The picture was taken to mark their 73rd wedding anniversary right before the prince passed away. Did y'all know that Prince Philip was already a prince of Greece before he was married to Queen Elizabeth II and became Prince Consort and Duke of Edinburgh? Because I didn't. But honestly, I should have guessed. I feel like the royal family previously used to keep the bloodlines quite close and within the realm of the blue bloods, you know? Ever heard of the blue bloods theory, anyone? People believe that you're either programmed in your blood to be wealthy or poor. It's a really interesting thought and rabbit hole to go down, that's for sure. In our number 7 spot, we have the Queen and her grandson. One of the last photos of Queen Elizabeth II with Prince Louis, her grandson, is such a treat to look at. This photo was taken at the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in June 2022, and honestly, earlier that day you do see the Queen looking possibly a little distressed. She's frowning a lot and truly just looking a little uncomfortable, but in this moment captured of the Queen and Prince Louis, she literally looks particularly blissful. Prince Louis is holding his ears in the most comical way, appearing a little distressed from the noise, I'm sure, of, you know, thousands of Brits below him that had come to honor the Queen in her celebrations. We have seen some other smaller royals do something similar when on the balcony in the past, but no one can deny that Prince Louis certainly is full of life and personality, and so it's really just a funny shot to see. Albeit sad though that perhaps the prince's last photo wasn't a smiling one, but I bet his adult self will appreciate the lightness of it. In our number 6 spot, we have the Jubilee family photo. The last photo of the family together on the balcony without Harry and Meghan was during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebration on the final day of June the 5th, 2022. Queen Elizabeth II can be seen with now King Charles III, now Queen Consort Camilla, Prince William, Duchess Kate, and their 3 kids, Prince Louis, Prince George, and Princess Charlotte. The royal family looks very happy to be celebrating the Queen's long reign. The Queen herself looks amazing in her vibrant green suit. However, in video footage from the time the family was on the balcony, the Queen does seemingly have moments of looking a little sad, and gosh, I wonder what's going through her mind. It's also really sad that this celebratory day is one of their last big celebrations and moments photographed together. In our number 5 spot, we have Prince Harry at the Queen's funeral. These are a few of the last photos taken of Prince Harry at the Queen's funeral. Of course, these photos are terribly sad to see and dark, as he is not only attending the Queen's funeral, but his grandmother's funeral. In some of the photos, you see the prince crying and hiding his face, and then you also see him walking during the service holding his wife Meghan Markle's hand. The prince stepped down from the royal family and gave up his name, and so during the funeral, we saw him be quite separated from his royal family. It was rumored that the prince and Meghan were snubbed for the funeral procession as they were seated in the second row behind the royal family, but whether that is protocol or snubbery, that has not been confirmed. Assuming it was protocol, that must have been so hard on him to not be able to fully be present with his family during this time, but hopefully he was included in ways we did not see. After Meghan Markle's expose with Oprah and the interviews that Harry has also done commenting on his family, I'm not so sure of that, but hopefully the death of the Queen will bring the family closer together again. In our number 4 spot, we have Prince William and Prince Harry together. One of the few photos captured at the funeral for Queen Elizabeth II is of Prince William and Prince Harry together, and these photos have had the world going crazy as to whether they are friendly or not. Some say that the two princes are not on good terms, while others say that they have made amends due to the passing of the Queen. What we are certain of is that they didn't seem to converse much during the service, and they definitely felt a tad frosty to each other. Although it was obviously a sad day, and perhaps the coldness of the photos really had more to do with their
their sadness for their grandmother and them both retreating within themselves mentally, as people often do at funerals, rather than them just being in a massive fight that has forever split them apart. The brothers were seemingly so close growing up, and so I think I speak for everyone when I say that I hope whatever is going on with them gets mended, because life is too short. In our number 3 spot, we have Peter Phillips. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. Who? Peter Phillips is not a part of the immediate royal family, but he is the son of Princess Anne, the Queen's daughter, and so he is another one of her grandsons. And while a rather dark photo was captured of him at the Queen's funeral that I just have to share with you all, he was caught possibly exposing his own thoughts in a photo from September 19th, the Queen's funeral, as he's walking behind Prince Harry and, yes, Meghan Markle. In the photo, he is glaring at Meghan Markle. Was he captured in a moment of internal judgment? Whatever is going on, it is clear that he feels some kind of negative feelings toward Meghan, and I mean, most of the royal family seemingly does, as Meghan has been exposing the behind the scenes goings on within the royal family. They have always been quite private, and the world saw them as a mystery, besides, well, some of the scandals that have happened over the years, but for the most part, they have remained quite private, so perhaps Peter feels uncomfortable with Meghan around, but in any case, this was a dark moment captured from that day. In our number 2 spot, we have Queen Elizabeth II waving to her father. Okay, I went back in the archives for this one. This photo honestly is super sad to see and quite dark, so I needed to add it to the list. In 1952, the Queen left for a trip to Kenya, and it was on this trip that she became Queen and learned of the death of her father, King George VI. In this photo we see right here, the Queen is looking at her father and waving to him for the last time. Whoa. Can you imagine if the last moment you had with your father was caught on camera? I'm sure this has been the case for a lot of people, but man, would that crumble me inside if that were to happen. It would be so sad, but also a gift as well. And when you think about it, the Queen looks quite happy in this photo, and so it's kinda a nice thought to think that perhaps one of the last moments that the King had with his daughter, she was smiling. Dark, but beautiful at the same time. Finally, in our number 1 spot, we have Prince Andrew at the funeral. Arguably one of the darkest last photos of one of the darkest royal family members, Prince Andrew is seen walking with his siblings and the new king from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey. He looks as one would expect one to look when their parent passes away, but it's hard to not look at him and see an aura of possibly someone who was involved with the horrendous crimes that were led by Jeffrey Epstein. After the public found out about Prince Andrew's relationship with Jeffrey and a lot of the suspicious activity that didn't get cleared up after Prince Andrew did an interview on the accusations, the prince resigned from his public roles, and the Queen herself removed his honorary military affiliations and royal charitable patronages in January 2022. Prince Andrew lobbied very hard to stop Charles from becoming king. Apparently Prince Andrew doesn't get on with King Charles III very well, so that's very interesting. Anyways, it's hard not to see a picture of him and immediately think dark.